Okay, this is BAS in the cloud. We're just going through introductions. We introduced Nicholas Wern.
Yeah, so my name is Nicholas Wern, here from Sweden. And yeah, I was just writing like the $1 trillion opportunity, right, Brad? If you remember the stuff that you wrote maybe 6 years ago. And I think like, why are we doing this kind of stuff? And I think one thing that you mentioned right now, Scott, is the, the building automation system in the cloud, BS in the cloud. And I think, like I said in the training sessions, I believe that it's going to be hybrid. Not everything is going to be in the cloud. It's going to be local control first. But I do believe that it's going to be building automation systems like ecosystems in the cloud. But I'm a really, really big proponent of edge native strategies. I've been working with digital twins for the last 4 to 5 years, seeing that what is happening in manufacturing, especially, where they started with cloud native strategies. They realized that big data and data lakes turned into data swamps pretty quickly. It was really, really hard to figure out what was going on. And cloud, as you probably all of you know, is driving costs quite a lot as well. It's increasing every year. So with going with local control first, what has been sort of like the modus operandi in the building automation industry anyway, I think that's sort of where we should actually go towards, because I'm seeing that in the manufacturing industry with Industry 4.0, 5.0, you really, really want to go from the edge first. So edge native. Then what I see again, is what you want to connect it. You want to have standardized tag data. Of course, we have Haystack, we have brick schema, we have taxonomies, ontologies, because once it's going to hit that data lake, you really, really, really want to know where it's coming from, when did it arrive, and of course also where it's going to lead to. And again, so my background is innovation and strategy. Working in the real estate lifecycle for the last 7 years. I was CEO of an IoT company. I found my way into smart buildings. I love BACnet more than people actually would understand here in Sweden, because no one understands BACnet. And I really believe that we need to make it easier to create smart buildings, and the democratization of smart building innovation really, really happens when there's a combination of buildings that can handle themselves. And it's not only about building automation, but going back to the topic of automated buildings, right? And that is, not only the energy side, not only the automation side, but everything that goes on in buildings. Something that, Brian and I talked about a little bit before, if I'm allowed to say, is, the 1,000 cuts problems that a lot of the VCs, a lot of the PropTech initiatives, they aim to solve one siloed problem. But then for real estate owners, for managers, for everyone, it's a little bit challenging in tying all these different data sources, together, including if you just have the BS system in the cloud. Again, you really need to know what you're doing. So I can hand it over to the next one, but if there's anything about digital twins, I think I know a little bit what I'm talking about, and I'm really looking forward to hearing everyone else talk about this. So great to be here. Or not.
Thank you, Nicholas. Otherwise known as the building whisperer, right?
Back in the day, yes. Yeah.
Back in your day, I love it. So cool. Well, thank you. Victor, would you like to kind of do an introduction?
Sure. Victor Arvelitis, I'm the GM of Trivium. Thank you for having me on the panel. I'm honored to be on the panel with such talent. A couple thoughts on cloud, and you kind of touched on it. The community has been doing something for a while, so this is not net new. What we have been seeing over the past couple decades is really a maturity curve that the community has been experiencing, and through that experience, what we're seeing is some of the foundational expectations on cloud BAS. For example, interoperability, expanding connectivity, secure by default, right? We have to extend that thought process to the cloud, ease of deployment, and it has to be, maintaining that open philosophy, right? So adding the flexibility and the capacity that cloud brings to us is really an extension of the platform, every dimension, right? So for us, it's really an evolution. We see it instead of a pivot. And because of it, I think it's going to be an option, right? People want the option of leveraging cloud services, not a mandate to do everything in the cloud. So I'll start with that. I'll echo a little bit of what what we've already heard in terms of a hybrid environment is probably going to exist for the foreseeable future. So from our point of view, making local and cloud work seamlessly is going to be top of mind. The other piece is that we're going to have to look at how we make connectivity easier, because if we struggle to extend the investment that we've made at the edge in those platforms into the cloud, if we struggle to do that, then cloud applications are going to struggle to take off. Because if you need 6-9 months to get an application working, because it takes that long to get data out, that's a struggle. So semantically rich data, access to that is a good start.
So our next panelist, Brian Oswald. Brian.
Morning, everyone. Welcome to those who just funneled in. My name is Brian Oswald. I'm the Senior Managing Director at CBRE ESI. Our primary focus is more on the delivery end of BAS in the cloud, whether that be through turnkey projects, system integration, or professional services, remote monitoring, triage, whatnot. It's a big topic for our clients. Nicholas and I do agree that there will be a hybrid approach as we move forward in this environment. To what extent is a little bit unknown right now, and we're still kind of figuring that out. But what is true and what is constant is the changing demands of the IT requirements, the security protocols, the things that we need to maintain current within our teams, within our approach, so that we don't put our clients at risk or in jeopardy of some sort of violation, right? And that, we've kind of seen it come full circle. 5 years ago, there was a major cloud push where everybody was trying to shift things to an off-prem deployment. Now we're starting to see some clients migrate back to on-prem. I think that back and forth trend likely is driven through some of the regulatory requirements, but as time goes on, we're going to see it kind of level out. And when it does, we just want to make sure we're in the right position to capitalize on that solution strategy to give our clients the best opportunity to migrate their solutions for the life cycle of the building. Because for us, that's the most important thing, right? So from a service provider standpoint, I need to make sure whatever we lay out and whatever we can support is not just for that single instance, but for the life cycle of whatever that product, whatever that software, or whatever that asset might be. And that's really what we're focused on in our Smart FM delivery approach within the larger CBRE organization. So thank you. And again, like Victor said, it's an honor to be part of this panel.
Thanks, Brian. Awesome. Our next panelist, Lauren Scott.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Scott. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Sustainability for Acuity Brands. To start things off, I actually want to ask 3 questions to this group. The first is, who here has been part of a reorg or a restructuring at your company? It could be past or present. Quite a few. When this reorg happened, how many of you asked yourselves, what the heck are they doing? A few more brave people here as well. And then how many of you 6 months, a year later, thought to yourself, okay, that actually made a lot of sense? No. Okay. 3. All right. Well, I'm a 4th then. So a year and a half ago, for the past 10 years, I've been working for a company that you're probably more familiar with than Acuity, which is Tech Controls. And so a year and a half ago, our parent company, Acuity Brands, actually separated the company into 2 distinct segments. They had the lighting controls, which Acuity Brands is known for, and then they also set up the Intelligent Spaces Group. In this, they put this classic BAS success story with this Tech Controls together with an Atrius company, which is a cloud provider. And many of us at this tech thought, it's going super well. Why are we getting partnered up with these experts in the cloud? But we have something that's going really, really well. So we had that period of asking ourselves, what the heck are we doing? But I have seen over the past year and a half that it absolutely made sense. And I think that this merging and this intersection of BAS and the cloud absolutely made sense at the sector level as well. And it's for 3 key factors. The first is really, it's based on the principle that you've probably all heard, jack of all trades, master of none. And it's the reality that we've seen so many different suppliers over the years really try and do everything, and in doing so actually lose expertise and their stronghold in what they've been known to do over the past years. So internally, what this has translated into is that we have teams who are dedicated and have spent 30, 40 years more on that tech side, on the cloud provider side, coming together with our deep expertise in the BMS or BAS space and merging our minds together, working together on projects. So it allows us to really kind of have that cross collaboration, but not lose sight of what got us to here today. It also allows us to open it up to external providers. And actually, this is not, it is a coincidence that we're on the same panel, but Distech Controls has also, through IP-based controllers, been able to open it up to digital service providers. And so we work with Code Labs. We've been able to keep our expertise in the BAS space, and then in working on projects with Code Labs or other digital service providers, we're able to offer a more robust offering to end customers to add the greatest amount of value. The second is that those in this room, we probably have access to more data than most. We have that last mile access to data through different BAS systems that we're able to bring to those cloud providers. And we're able to do so in a really meaningful way. So instead of just, we mentioned at the very beginning how expensive it is to shove data up into the cloud, we're able to do that edge computing and making sure that we're doing it in a very mindful way, in the way that it's going to have the greatest impact for our customers. And then finally, and this is where I work in it the day-to-day, is on the sustainability side, is that sustainability professionals, we spend our lives in Excel spreadsheets. And without the cloud, we don't have that opportunity to be able to bring in all of those different data points to make meaningful decisions. So when we're trying to pull in how much energy use in each of our facilities, and we're trying to pull in transportation of our employees to come to conferences like this, instead of being in an Excel spreadsheet, we're able to pump all of that information into the cloud and make meaningful decisions. We also know that regulations are coming in, whether we want it or not, in terms of our emissions reporting, where large companies like your customers are going to be required to provide us information at a sustainability reporting level. So by having access to the cloud and being able to pull in all of our BAS data along with all the other data points, we're able to do so in a more meaningful way. So I hope you guys don't have to go through a reorg to see the benefit of the BAS coming together with the cloud, and that you're able to gain that kind of excitement coming from this panel.
Thank you, Lauren. That was awesome. Triv, you ready?
Yes.
All right, take it over.
Cool. Hey guys, I'm the co-founder of Code at Trivium. Like everybody said already, it's an honor to be on the panel with everyone. It's definitely people that know a lot, not just about cloud, but about the industry and some thoughtful leaders. So from a cloud perspective, as Code, we started the company in October 2017. Really, our mindset was always cloud first, because on-prem, you just have really great products already, and products that everybody's already used to working with, and does already do an amazing job. From how we look at the cloud and how the industry started, how we're seeing the industry looking at the cloud more and more, there's always the debates of on-prem or cloud. That's never going to change, probably for a lot longer. But what we are seeing is governments moving to the cloud, which is a huge sign. We're seeing regulations, like everybody was just talking about it, Ron was just talking about that too. How we see this from a cloud perspective too is that it's really, where do you want to start? Because you're going to go to cloud sooner or later. Everyone's going to cloud. We're probably one of the industries that's a little bit more behind with this. So do you want the starter pack where you start to just bring a little bit of data to understand what's happening on your on-prem, or do you want a more full package, which you can find all over in the show as you're kind of walking around? With that type of full package, it's really, are you looking for an actual cloud for smart buildings? Because you can get Google, you can get Amazon, you can get Azure and everything else, but you still have to put these together. So really, what is your level of investment as a system integrator, or what is your level of investment as an end user, depending on, again, what your appetite is? Are you looking to solve for regulation, or are you looking to solve for operations? And then from there, just turns into more of a security aspect, which is inevitable. We talk about this a lot, but it really comes down to what kind of certifications does that platform have that you're bringing to the cloud? Does that platform understand levels of backnet API? Cloud API is something that's much easier, but understanding backnet already has a good amount of security protocols in place, where if you want to be, and I don't want to go into detail about security and all that other stuff, but it starts with really giving control to that corporation where they can have the users manage everything through an Active Directory. Then at the backend level is very simple. You know, Nicholas was talking about it earlier. It really comes down to priority levels, how you're going to set your priority levels to be more secure than other things that go into place. Again, we can talk about that forever, but it really comes down to what kind of process that specific provider has, and do you feel comfortable with their disaster recovery to really go further? So that's, you know, that's kind of a good, I think, a good place to start.
That was awesome. Thank you. There's so many dynamics to this, right? There's the there are questions though that come to mind, right? When you talk about connecting a building control system to a cloud. And I know one of the main questions that is already bubbled up quite a few times. And Nicholas, are you with me? Nicholas, can you share with everybody? I mean, in your, you know, in your thoughts, where do we go on-prem and where can we go off? You know, what has to be on-prem versus off-prem? Can you give us some thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great question, and thank you for everyone for providing your insights. I mean, I'm definitely learning a lot here as well. I think that's, again, you know, the local control first has to stay on the edge, obviously, and also for security purposes. And I think like the difference I think I see more in the future is that I personally want to give control or enable the real estate owners or the asset managers to control their data from the very edge. And if you look at it from a Tesla perspective, you know, you have a lot of onboard intelligence. If the intelligence and everything else would be in the cloud, what would happen if the internet connectivity would go down, right? You wouldn't succeed. And it's more from a fleet management perspective. And I also think that, again, you know, in the building automations or BMS side or automated buildings, we sort of stare at, you know, what we do. But again, from a building perspective, there's a lot of things that happen, right? And I think also here from a Swedish perspective, it's that it takes a lot of time to get products into buildings. I think like Brian maybe mentioned that, or someone in the beginning, that where the combination of you actually have the digital twin in the cloud, potentially, you have all the intelligence, how the building operates on the edge, but the digital twin itself, that's where you open up for innovation. So that's exactly what we've done here in Sweden in the last couple of years with innovation projects, as in we talk to Schneider, we talk to Siemens, we talk to basically anyone, and we invite to innovate in the digital twin, not with the building itself, right? And that meant that we can try out solutions in the virtual representation of the building without any risk, right? The customer can see, this is what will happen if we use your tool. This is exactly how much it's going to cost. And because we have all the, you know, the data, the rich semantic data from the edge pumping into the digital twin, it displays exactly what it's going to be. So I think like, you know, for me, again, I think like, you know, 90% or 99% should definitely be at the edge for not only for the building automation system, but, you know, have an intent, even from the beginning when we're building new buildings, that everything should be interoperable, that we should actually build buildings first and involve others, you know, in the construction phase, even the users, the, you know, the HVAC people, the mechanical, the engineering, everyone. Because today it's not only the smart building or the existing building industry that is sort of fragmented, it's actually the construction part, it's the architecture part. So I think instead of trying to mend this sort of broken or fragmented, I would say, industry, I think we also have to go back a little bit to the beginning, where I definitely believe that if you build a building right now, you should. It has to be edge native first. Again, you know, with the rising cloud cost, sustainability purposes, all these kind of things, it has to have onboard intelligence. So I don't know if that answered the question, but I think for security reasons, for robustness, for everything, edge native starting there, and then looking at, you know, from a federated digital twin perspective, just feeding the information and insights into the cloud. That's really, really what I see, so that, you know, ESG reporting will be easier, and you can take a lot of data and augment the building and, you know, have the combination of insights from a hybrid perspective, if that makes sense. So definitely edge first.
It makes perfect sense, yeah. And I love the Tesla analogy. I think it's a perfect analogy, Nicholas. I think that's perfect. And so I'm gonna ask Ettrid a question, because Ettrid's service is 100% cloud-based. So how do you keep buildings from crashing into each other?
to me, what I maybe don't agree, Nicholas, is the cloud costs, because there's ways to actually really optimize where even 5 years with cloud data, you can still be very, very cost effective and much more cost effective than leaving that data on the server on the prem, because it's, to just maintain that data is really hard. And I'm not going to talk about the data integrity and all the other stuff. You guys know that. But how we scale cloud in a portfolio, or how our system integrators really are scaling cloud is, they have the tools and they have really the process already set in place. So to where, as you're bringing buildings, within that building, you're bringing integrations. Within those integrations, you're bringing different protocols and the different API cloud integrations. It starts with managing that and maintaining that and showing the end users that how those integrations are actually working. Then from there, you can build whatever applications, but at the connectivity level, I think this year is a huge year for connectivity in our space. I really believe that this year, everybody is going to be working on a easier way to connect to cloud. Whether that's through MQTT, reverse proxy, or even better VPN options, depending on what the requirements are. I think that's a huge one. And then from a security standards perspective, they're really easy things like kill switches, where if you are on the cloud, and then at the priority level being higher on-prem in case connectivity goes down, because that'll happen too, and you can still have control through your local, let's say, BMS or whatever other system you're using. Those are ways that we can really start to just some simple things, and then going into the details. Again, there's so much that you can do, but I think from a scaling perspective, it's really having something that continuously keeps updating when it comes to data engineering, right? So like in our space, there's I think, again, I can't stress enough how much we go around all over the world and meet different people. There's so much knowledge in our space. But we're always used to just saying, hey, no, we don't know this, or this is too, maybe like, I think we always underestimate what we can really do and the data that we bring forward to our clients and the meaning of that, right? So like all from a cloud perspective, all that should be happening is making that data way more scalable so that it's open to those end users to be able to have better ROIs regardless of what ROIs they're looking for.
Gotcha, cool. So Victor, Trivium, you guys are like right in the crosshairs, as you guys have kind of led the industry in kind of connecting buildings to the internet. So can you speak to how your company is adjusting its path with the advent of the cloud?
Yes. So a couple things. One is from I'll answer it two parts because I'll answer it in two parts because I think part of it is technology, and I think the other part is business model. So from a technology standpoint, yes, we have been working with the community wherever and doing some of these things. What we're trying to do now is a natural evolution of what we've been doing. So it's really about making what we already have on-prem extended to leverage cloud scalability, right? That's kind of what we've been talking about. For us, what does that mean? It means deploying tools and services that will make that easier. One of the things that we avoid is talking about what the costs are in trying to figure out all the smoke and mirrors that exist with cloud applications. I mean, it's a tough environment if you're an end user to try to figure out what's real and what's not. Yeah. And if there's such a high cost to exploring what is real, people aren't going to do it. So trying to make the cost of getting into the benefits of cloud, trying to lower those barriers is what we're doing through what we're putting out in terms of products and services. So I think the clear, easy step is how do we get the investment that we've already made on-prem in tagging data, and doing all the things that we already do, connecting southbound. How do we extend that to the cloud by providing semantically rich data a lot easier than what's available today? That's number one. But I also don't want, I know this is about cloud, so we're going to focus on cloud, but I also don't want to, overlook the importance of on-prem and making sure that we provide the right solutions, at the edge that allow for things like AI and ML at the edge, running things that will optimize buildings at the edge, control buildings at the edge, and then optimize leveraging the scale of cloud. To do that, and we talked about how people have been using VMs and all sorts of stuff for ages, but the business model didn't really coincide with it, right? So with cloud comes a bunch of different business models that we're all exploring. I think we're kind of becoming more familiar with as an industry and becoming more comfortable with as an industry. And so from our products and services, they also have to carry those business models in order to facilitate that transition to the cloud. So I'll leave it there, but just a couple minutes.
Cool. Interesting. So with that, Mr. Brian Oswald, my question to you, what Victor just said, what do you think? Is that going to help your guys' journey? And can you speak a little bit to what we were talking about before in terms of, like the Tesla analogy? How do you guys deal with that in terms of making sure that, everything works no matter whether the cloud's there or not with all those services?
Absolutely. Yeah, from a service provider standpoint, anything in the cloud is an enablement for us to perform our service in a more efficient manner when providing the right tools to do so and the right access to that level of engagement. Right? That's first and foremost. So we have to be accepting and constantly adapting our business model to adjust to the technology or the approach that exists in the market today. And BAS in the cloud is one of those. The challenge is a little bit different. From our standpoint, or even from a CBRE standpoint, if we engage on a client, an enterprise client, they likely have many cloud applications or applications that live in the cloud, might be a better way to say that. So now what we're faced with is less about just integrating data points from the building, but not only the data point integration, it's the data point in cloud consolidation. And that has turned into a separate avenue of which we have to focus our time on, so that if there's a lighting application that runs data in its own cloud, is there an API from that suite of tech stack to what we want to deliver in a smart FM offering? Just an example like that. So it is a little bit more complicated in how we're managing all of those environments and how we're having to engage at all of those different levels and provide a consistent support layer. That has made it more challenging for the service provider. However, the need for on-prem deployments or at-edge connectivity is still there. I mean, when you're dealing in listen, every vertical is there. You're in high-risk situations. The demand for on-prem deployments or at-edge technology is greater than somebody who has less critical information and can live in a cloud environment. And honestly, that's okay. It's the ability for the service provider and the understanding of that service provider to pivot and provide the right solution or alignment of cloud technology and on-prem delivery to put the best solution forward. It is challenging. We use the Netflix analogy an awful lot, right? You have Netflix, you have Paramount, you have Peacock. All of a sudden, next thing you know, you have 30 different service providers, 30 different clouds, and you're asking yourself, why I have this giant bill, and how am I going to consolidate? And that is what we get asked an awful lot today. And that's where, cloud is great, but we have to figure out how to best align it so that we can deliver a service that's manageable.
Awesome. So you hit on something that's important, which is, it's a new business model, right? It's something that, it's not just a technology conversation, it's about business as well. And so Lauren is an executive at Acuity, and they're really getting into the cloud services now. And can you talk about the business of that and what Acuity is looking at with that?
Sure. Well, the first piece that comes to mind is something I mentioned quickly, which is on the sustainability side. So one opportunity that we're seeing is a natural extension of the BAS space is figuring out how do we grab all of the data from within building operations and then bring them up for that sustainability reporting. So we're already seeing it from a business model extension of bringing in the SaaS provider or solution with Atrius, pairing it with Distech Controls technology. I would say the larger business play is Acuity Brands is known as being the largest North American provider of lighting. And with lighting and lighting controls come all those additional data points. So what do you do with all of that data? You now have it from BAS, you have it from lighting, you're centralizing it. So certainly leveraging the cloud. We talked a little bit about digital twin and the role of that. So I think it's laying that groundwork as to what's to come. There will be further announcements this year, but for right now, that's pretty much what I can share.
Thanks, Lauren. That's cool. Okay, so in the future, of course, you know, we're obviously with the cloud, AI, machine learning, those things become a reality, digital twins, and Nicholas, you do a fantastic job of writing about that. I love reading your column in automated buildings. I think you just do a fantastic job. Could you give everybody a little feel of what we might be looking at in the future with digital twins and whatnot?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, it's fantastic. And thank you so much, Scott, for saying that. It's definitely been a bumpy ride, even with digital twins. But I think that, you know, yesterday's, you know, session with augmented reality, virtual reality, all this stuff about, you know, that everyone hears about, you know, ChatGPT, blockchain, crypto. Again, if you fast forward 10 years into the future, maybe, hopefully, those are just going to be, you know, BACnet, Modbus. It's going to be tools that underpin the future of smart buildings, right? And I think, like, you know, a couple of years ago, even still, you know, a lot of people in the BAS community, building automation systems community, is like, you know, digital twins, that's just bullshit, right? I don't believe it. It's not going to work. It's just hype. And I think, you know, maybe it still is, but I honestly see that the results that we're getting, not from an AI perspective, not from a, you know, computer perspective, data perspective, just, you know, being able to communicate with, you know, people, right? Having a digital twin, it's the best thing, right? So the principal of one of the schools, she said that, Nicholas, I don't care about this smart self-learning, you know, AI-driven system. I don't care whatsoever. What I want is a building that has good indoor air quality. If there is a problem, I want to be easily communicate that to the ones in charge. I want them to then understand what are the problems, and for them to understand what has happened, what is happening, and what will happen. And for me, that is the benefit of digital twins. It enables, you know, to communicate through systems. If you feed it with real-time data, it enables you to communicate with people across any age and industry, and basically getting this together. So to summarize, I mean, I definitely believe that every building will have a digital twin. I believe that it will be powered by edge native strategies. And I also hope that everyone in the industry will actually make the buildings better, right? And I think that's the sort of like the main difference between possibly cloud and edge native strategies, that if you go edge first, you're sort of trying to look at it from a building perspective. You try to integrate it. Instead, if you're going pure cloud, you're making vendors sort of like they are in control of the data, and integrating not only the data from the BAS systems, but everything else is a challenge, right? So you're perpetuating vendor lock-in, perpetuating, you know, making integrators happier, obviously, because they're going to work, you know, in infinity. Whereas as if you look 10 years down the road, if you start with edge native strategies now, the building itself is going to retain the knowledge. The people that you're going to hire to do the job might be anywhere on the planet, because then they can, you know, VPN in and work with that building if they need to. But again, the purpose of automated buildings is to make buildings automated. It's not just about building automation, it's actually making them do as much as possible to, you know, be aware of what they need to be aware of, that Ken used to say. And I think that's our goal, right? And I think that's, you know, a little bit of the business models have to change. A little bit of everything has to change. And I think that, you know, now is the time, if not only for, you know, sustainability's purposes, I think for the industry, because we got a skill shortage gap around, right? And I think, you know, we need to do, you know, more And I think we need to get, new people to the industry. And I think like the digital twins, the technology that is the underpinning of digital twins is also the perfect means to get this to happen, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Thank you. And so Victor, tell us, so Nicholas has got a dream in the future and makes a lot of sense. So how is Trivium, what's Trivium working on to kind of follow suit? I know you can't give us your secret, but what can you share with the audience?
So it's funny, we just talked about digital twin and anyway, by the way, I'm a core believer in that, and I'll comment on one thing that he did mention, because he said that some of these things feel hype, gimmicky, and I agree, like you see the VR sets and some of that stuff, and it does feel gimmicky, but it's in those things that we find like nuggets of technology that actually will get us to the next step, right? So we have to kind of bear with that a bit in the industry, but I think there are nuggets of things that feel gimmicky at the moment, but will actually bear fruit. I think some of the things that we're doing in Trivium are going to lay the foundation for things like digital twin. When you are exporting your histories and the model data, that lays the foundation for things like digital twin. It enables applications to then write on that data that is already been invested in at the edge. So, from my point of view, I think the services that we're offering, things that we're trying to provide, is really a tool set that will overcome some of the bigger barriers in adopting some of these technologies that will rise.
So like you guys are thinking more in terms of how to really make it easier to move data and more organized and that type of, I mean, is that really, do you feel that that isn't there more to this? Like
There's absolutely more to the story. Right. So that's a stepping stone, right? And it's not all cloud, because even if you look at our hardware, the evolution of our hardware, we are putting more processing power at the edge. And why are we doing that? Well, because there is going to be compute that is going to occur at the edge, and there's going to be more applications that run at the edge to do things that make it fun, right? One of the really cool things that that we put into our next generation platform is, neural processing, right? Do we know exactly how that's going to be leveraged? No. But we have already seen, little glimpse of the future in where AI and ML will have to reside and run at the edge. And we are preparing for that. Now, in terms of cloud services, data is a stepping stone. But think about being able to, possibly go into or go into a station without the use of VPN network, or using the cloud as a repository for next generation downloads of your software, or the list goes on and on. And it's an extension of things that you do on-premise, but it's complementary, and you don't have to use it all. You can use some of it, and depending on the applications, you can leverage the stuff.
I knew I could get a little more out of them for you guys, so I had to do it for you. So thank you, Victor. Awesome. So Etrid, you guys have done a great job of providing services from the cloud to the end users. And I know you're not the end user, but you get a lot of their perspective. From their perspective, this conversation, how do they feel about this conversation? Like, what's your customers' thoughts?
Yeah, that's a great question. Depending on who is on the other side, right? So if you're dealing with your local users, the operators, the engineers within the building, many times, they're all they want to do is solve problems for themselves, right? They just run around all day long. They have so many things going on. And if you can solve a pain point for them, they usually are open to more cloud products, right? And then that pain point has to they're very smart people. They've been doing this for a long time. That pain point really has to solve something that is cost effective, like everybody was just talking about. And the other end users that are making the decisions, depending again what industry you're in, if you're in a healthcare, they have some different questions. So a lot more. Are you SOC 2 certified? That's really the first thing that comes into play. If you can get through that, you can get through a lot more things. The smart building, the smart building VPs these days, VPs of sustainability, VPs of engineering, they're asking different questions because they want to compile this information and data into one place where they can see their whole portfolio, how fast you can do it, how cost effective that is. And then from there, some of the questions that they typically ask is if their IT is requesting things, they're requesting to know what cloud you're on. Are you cloud centric? Are you able to, deploy into another cloud all of your microservices in a way where now they can do whatever they do with it or control that data flow. And then the other huge part that Victor just brought up and is connectivity, right? So it's like how are you going to connect from your buildings to the cloud? What are the protocols there, right? So having different options for them that they already agree with and approve is a huge stepping stone. I mean, it's everything basically, right? So being able to do that in a way where they are comfortable is a big deal. Then from there, there's a lot of clouds out there, we can start with Oracle, start with Google, Azure, Amazon. That's where you want to host your data storage, right? But a lot more what we're seeing now, they're looking for like a supervisor in the cloud. I know that sounds a little bit different, but really they're looking for a smart building cloud that they can turn on different applications that can be cost effective, right? So whether you choose one service or a different service, it just depends on, there's a lot of, I would say there's a lot of confusion. I think that confusion is starting to become more clear, and this year it's going to be very, very cool. But those are the things that they're looking for. And then from a consulting perspective, they're looking, they're putting out use cases and user stories, right? But realistically, those use cases and user stories have to tie to some systems. And then we as an industry, we speak systems, right? So being able to have a way to connect the use cases and user stories to the right systems is just an easy way to connect with the consultants and an easy way to connect with the engineering world and then be able to specify more.
Cool, thank you. And so Lauren, looking at, we have all these clouds now, obviously. You guys are Acuity, you're doing business strategy. How do you guys look at this competitive environment of all these clouds as you start to design your services?
I think it's a really natural concern to be worried about that. But at the end of the day, and you're probably going to tell me it's an oversimplification, but cloud providers get paid the more we use real estate in the cloud. And so they're incentivized to develop technology that allows us within our sector to use more real estate within the cloud. So we actually have really close relationships, leveraging the AWS platform, leveraging Azure IoT. Last January, Acuity Brands actually had a formal announcement with Microsoft leveraging their Azure IoT platform for cloud for sustainability. So it's actually more of a partnership and an opportunity. I think cloud providers do not want to do that last mile data collection and integration. So they're quite happy to partner with those of us in the space that have that expertise and that are already present at the edge.
Cool. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of new business relationships, right? It's sort of how it's going to run. So, okay. So Brian, you guys have, like I said, you guys have been running your service for a long time. Where do you see the future of your service or that part of the industry in general based on how, with the experience you guys have gained?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely moving to central data storage, cloud applications, microservices, as was previously mentioned. And that's going to continue, as, not only from a BAS or an integration provider, but as an FM provider, utilization of this data to reduce your OpEx, to improve your CapEx spending, different ways of prioritization is extremely important. We are in an ultra competitive cost-cutting mode right now throughout the industry, throughout the real estate environment. So anywhere you can leverage cloud data, a different approach to how you're doing things today, clients are listening and they're accepting of those. It doesn't necessarily mean the hurdles are reduced, but they're listening. And that's a huge step forward than where we were maybe 2 years ago. So I do agree that you are going to see a little less noise this year, partly because you're going to see a little less investment this year. I don't think you're going to see the VC investments that we've seen over the last 5 years. I don't think you're going to see a lot of the new prop techs launch. I think you're going to see a greater focus on the actual delivery of what's out in the market today. And those who can be successful in that approach will be sustainable, and those who won't will likely fall off the vine. And that's a natural occurrence, but you will see that in the next 24 months, just given the way the industry is trending. And so for us, we're gonna, we continue to adapt to these changing environments, but really focus on how we can provide that holistic offering, whether that's a hybrid approach or a complete cloud application, because that inevitably is what's going to be the ask of the client.
And I think Brian hit on a really critical point for all of us, which is oftentimes when we're asked to lower the cost of a service or an install, we oftentimes are worried about using new technology because we don't know, what it'll do. But in so many instances, we've seen the new technology lower the cost of the service, right? So by utilizing a cloud service, maybe instead of trying to do everything on-prem in terms of, managing and updating and all those things of that service, you can actually sell it at a lower cost, right? Because the cloud, the cost of entry for somebody is for you, it's a lot lower if you're just managing one server in a data center instead of having to go on to the site, all that stuff. So oftentimes technology can be used to lower your cost and make you more competitive. And I believe that's the one thing this industry will capitalize on with cloud services is simply lowering the cost of what we do every day. So cool. Well, those are your questions from me. So we do have time for audience questions. Would anybody like to ask a question of any of the panelists? Oh, yeah, back there.
Hey, Scott. Just a question. One of the things that for you, kind of looking forward, and maybe Brian's got the most experience with this, but our industry clearly has a labor and resource talent shortage. I'm curious what people's thoughts are on from either a future direction where we're going or for people on the panel, how you might see leveraging cloud to address some of that problem.
Sure, panelists, somebody want to go ahead?
Actually, I think Brian.
Yeah, I'll have you chime in to start it. Cloud is an enabler, as I said before, to that. The globalization of data and the support services that we can render from that data makes it easier from a service provider who struggles to find that talent in this space today. Even our own delivery model is not centrally located in one geographic location. It's more of a follow the sun approach because you cannot find good talent who wants to work third shift and take a boiler call in the middle of the night. But if I have somebody in Germany covering that who's equally talented and understands that system at least to a level where they can provide a value, that's a game changer. And that is enabled because of cloud and the data that exists in that cloud and the way that service is rendered through that cloud. So for us, that is a positive, and it is something that we're trying to capitalize on more. But even at a micro level, you take a traditional facility management client with multiple sites. If I can manage better truck rolls done, or I can manage my truck rolls better, if I can manage my repair costs better, if I can be a more in tune with the priorities of what the repair is, that's still all enabled through the cloud. And that still will reduce the overall operating expense of that facility, which inevitably could reduce that FM cost, and at the very least reprioritize that resource to focus on things that are more important than a nuisance alarm or something that would have caused a truck roll to occur in an emergency situation versus something that could have waited to next day. So we do see it as a big factor in how we're looking at global talent shortage, the education of new resources, and how we can offset that by utilizing the information that's out there.
Some other thoughts, Patrick?
Brian was spot on. So really what we're seeing from our end users is, and our partners, is more command center type of management rather than building by building, right? So like you may have a really good chief engineer in one building, but you have 10 other buildings in that city. That chief engineer can probably run those 10 buildings and deploy things or deploy tasks through cloud and everywhere else, or where they see fit. But the only way that we're seeing that work really well is also by picking the right on-prem products that are able to scale and how the cloud scales also, right? And then everything else, Brian hit spot on.
Yeah, I think the opportunity in just avoiding truck rolls, or just knowing what you're going to see when you show up, that maybe takes 3 truck rolls down to 1. I think that right there is huge, and from a labor shortage standpoint, has a pretty big impact to the industry. I also think leveraging expertise globally is going to be a continued trend in the industry, and being able to remotely do things that you weren't able to do before. Massive savings for labor.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously with AI and things like ChatGPT and where we're kind of headed as a society, Nicholas, are we going to end up not needing anybody one day? I mean, where are we going, man? Where are we going to end up?
Yeah, it's a good question, actually. I was actually writing a lot of that stuff down. Now we're talking like the future of the industry kind of stuff. But I mean, just from a practical perspective, I think, I've been trying, and again, this is not easy, right? Anyone that has done, a hardware project or a software project or AI, especially in buildings, getting the data out and getting people aligned is not the easiest thing that you want to do in the world. But I think it's meaningful because right now, 1 year in, I was supposed to go down to the city where we have the schools, it's a blizzard. I couldn't go down. So with the guy that was, on site, he went down, we just shared, calls, and he could just stand next to a radiator. I just held his hand there, just counting down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and open up valves or close valves. And just, to prove to him, the technical asset owner, that all of this is possible, right? But there's also a distrust, for AI, for the systems, for that it is working, because there's a lot of guesswork still in the industry, and you're used to it. And again, like the truck rolls come because you're, getting out, you don't necessarily know what the problem is. Then you get back out, and then you collect the stuff, and then you go back in. You have the wrong stuff. You have to pick the right stuff. All these kind of things. And I think there's obviously, technology. The future is already here. It's differently distributed, and I think there's going to be take some time, of course, for the industry from a person perspective, people perspective, to understand that systems can work. AI can actually, do some good use if it's fed with, good data, rich data. But it's also, the fact that ChatGPT, when I'm asking it questions, it maybe gets like 80% stuff right. And if we're also building the future or something that is 80%, then it's, shit in, disaster out. So you got to be a little bit careful of what is going on. But I believe, what everyone said, that, we have to start now. And again, one thing that I just want to finalize with, if you look at something called the Gartner hype cycle, right? Mm-hmm. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a hype cycle that sort of dictates or depicts, I wouldn't say dictates, even though that's how consultants treat it. It depicts, digital twins, blockchain, smart buildings, AI, all this kind of stuff, when it's going to hit maturity in any industry, right? Or specific industries. But the secret right there is that 95% of all the technologies that they're talking about can be used today, right? And that's the stuff that is going to provide a leg up from your competitors. Because again, when the smartphone came out, industry experts say like, this is shit. No one's going to use it. When internet came out, this is shit. This is no one. I mean, who wants to do this stuff? It's the same with the metaverse. It's the same with AI. It's the same with everything all the time. And that's sort of like the funny, not so funny thing when you're sort of like living in the future, right? That knowing that all these technologies are here. And those are the tools that are going to provide the foundation of future to come. And that's what we need to, employ and deploy as soon as humanly possible. Otherwise, we're perpetuating obsolescence. And that's not really something we want to do in this day and age with energy, with all this kind of stuff. We need to throw the right people with the right technology in the right order. And there's definitely, edge native, cloud is in there to be able to do these kind of things, on a global scale. That's what I see. So, go out there, get started, and learn from, everyone here on the panel, and just, try to get the future going, because otherwise you might end up when it's too late and you're not going to have a job because the assets that you've been maintaining are going to be obsolete. And that's definitely something that we're seeing pretty fast.
Yeah, thanks, Nicholas. Lauren, do you have some thoughts?
Yeah, I'm actually happy you mentioned the Gartner hype cycle. And for those who can't see it, basically that's actually the whole premise as to why we started getting into the digital services option and with our program. And it's this idea that instead of our teams getting distracted, and Blake, to answer your question, we don't want our teams to have to shift focus every single time there's a new technology out there, because you're going to be depleting your current resources and they can't focus on what's already in the pipeline. So I think by leveraging the cloud and being able to access those digital services, it allows your already constrained resources to focus on what they do best, and then to lean on those outside services to be able to kind of expand the value offering.
Yeah, one of Ken's assistant editors actually wrote an article by interviewing ChatGPT. And for those of you who haven't read it, automatedbuildings.com, it's a good read. Yeah. And it should scare you. Just saying, if you're in sales in this industry, I don't know your life cycle. I gotta say, yeah. I mean, they can answer the questions properly. Just not kidding. Your personality, that's why you're in sales. Thank you for that. Okay, any other questions? But yes.
I'm from the airport in Toronto, Canada. So last year, one of the major internet provider got a major shutdown. We lost the connection of the internet for a long time. So I know the cloud service is very good. And how are we going to deal with the scenario like that? Also, in the past, you see Google got hacked and our service a while. Microsoft got the issue too. So if we rely more on the cloud base there, so how are we going to deal with when this type of incident happens?
Well, just from summarizing some of what we heard today, I think that most projects have an on-prem, off-prem plan to start. So your building, I'm sure, was designed to run without an internet connection. It's really, and I think Edric mentioned it, it's really, that service component those services may not work, but the building should still run. And for those of you, it's just a basic concept that you should all consider when implementing cloud services, which is what happens if this connection goes away. And of course, we handle things, important things like heating and cooling and electrical systems. And so we can't fail as an industry, right? So we have an obligation to our industry to make sure that our on-prem system is designed to run without an internet connection. Now, the services that help support maybe maintenance or finance or emergency services in the case of an airport, those services may have some disruption, right? And that may mean that as an operator, you have to have a plan B too, because some of those services, the information it's feeding, may need to be sent a different method, right? Because they still may be so. So I believe that as an operator, you should have a very contingency plan after contingency plan. Would be my thoughts. So anything else to add?
I just got a quick comment. I think first of all, I think you've done fantastic. No, that's actually Vancouver Airport. So maybe Toronto should talk to Vancouver Airport, because I know that they've done some cool stuff with digital twins. But we've seen that also over the last year. And if we didn't have an edge native strategy, again, there's a lot of data that would be lost, right? What we do right now, if we get an outage, we just repopulate it from the edge. So we get all the data. So I agree everything what Scott said, but it's also the fact that, the resiliency aspect is really, really important. And just, I was working a little bit also with shipping. So shipping is also pretty interesting, as in Caribbean cruise lines, right? Because they don't have stellar, connectivity at all times. So you just, Google I think Caribbean Cruises have done some really cool stuff with Kafka. And then you can have a look around. And if you need anything, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn as well. regarding these kind of things, right? Because airports is also super interesting. That's just a comment. Sorry.
Thank you, Nicholas. So unfortunately, we are out of time. I would like to thank my panel, Nicholas, Victor, Brian, Lauren, Etrid. Thank you guys so much.